Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 289 of How Do You Write? I'm Rachael Herron. So glad that you are here today as I talk to Kit Mayquist. And this is one of those episodes. It's just one of them where I fangirl out. And this new book that just dropped this week is one that you should get. Just go get it. I loved it so much. I blurbed it. I was lucky enough to read it early and get asked to read it for a potential blurb and couldn't stand it. It was so good. I'm just going to stop. You'll hear enough of it in the interview. That's coming up. What is going on around here? Well, I am 14,000 words into the new book, and I got 12,000 words in before I realized it wants to be in first person, which was a shock to me. I love reading first person, but the vast majority of my books, 90% of the fiction, 95% of the fiction I've written has been in third person. I think I've only written one novel in first person, and that was Stolen Things, the most recent book. And I don't know. I don't know if I love writing in first person. I'm just putting this together right now. It could be because I am also a memoirist and I write so much in the first person when I am writing creative nonfiction. Maybe that's it. And maybe my brain doesn't actually really like divorcing that part of my brain. Maybe my brain doesn't like me writing I all over the time, all over the place when I'm not writing about myself. I don't know. I'm going to think about that a little bit more deeply. But for this book, it seems like what it wants. And here's why I brought it up, and here's why I wanted to mention it. This is one of those times, and I have seen this in newer writers, that this can throw them into paralysis. Oh my God, should this book be written in first person? Oh my God, should I stop? Oh my God, should I go back and revise so that it matches? So I get rid of the third person and make it the first person. And here is what I do, and here's what I encourage everyone to do. Wherever you get an idea like this, try it. What I do is I make a post-it. I make a post-it, and I also write all in caps in the document, something like now trying first person. And that's what I did. I tried first person and it just felt so much better. And now I am moving forward through the book, pretending like the entire book is fixed. That all those, the first 10% of the book, which I will have to fix to first person, which is just one of those irritating little tasks, because you've not only got to change the she's to I's, but you've got to change subject verb agreement, those kind of things. So that'll be a lot of nitpicky details later, which I will get into later when I am not in first draft mode anymore. First draft mode means I have my first draft hat on, and my first draft hat tries not to let the editor into the room at all. The editor, well, she always gets in somehow and she starts chipping away at me that I'm doing it wrong. But then I ask her to sit quietly over in the chair over there while I just write 1,000 or 2,000 words today. And then she can have her say. But when I'm in first draft mode, I don't turn the editor on as much as possible. Therefore, I keep moving forward wherever I am. And in fact, this first person idea occurred to me yesterday. Switched to first person, working great. Today, I had the terrible thought run through my head, oh God, should it be in present tense? And even though I'm making a hash out of the first draft, because that's what we do with first drafts, I just let myself try it in present tense. And it didn't feel right. And I cannot tell you why. There is nothing right or wrong about first, second, or third person. And there is nothing right or wrong about past or present tense. And don't let anyone tell you that there is. There used to be this bias that good writing, literary writing, had to be third person past. The end. That's all we're going to say about it. And if you Google for this, you will always find the myth that says first person present tense is bad writing. Tell that to Ocean Vuong. Tell that to a million other people, none of whom are popping to mind right now, who write in first person present tense. There are no rules. It's what you want and what the book wants. I think it's actually more about what the book wants. And currently my book wants first person past tense. So I tried the present tense for a while, stopped. I will fix all of that later, not now, because my job is to just keep moving forward through this story, which I do not understand yet. And it makes me very nervous. And all first drafts for me feel like walking a tightrope strung between two immensely tall buildings in high Wellington winds. It's very uncomfortable. I don't like it, although sometimes I love it. A lot of times I love it, but on principle, I don't like it at all because I like certainty and I have very little certainty when I am writing first drafts. And that sucks. And it is the point. The whole point is learning how to be comfortable with this discomfort. And I'm practicing it every day. I sat down this morning and I thought, boy, do I not want to write. Boy, do I not want to write today. And then my next thought was, yep, that's discomfort. What do we do with discomfort? Yeah, we show up and we do a little work. So that's what I did. And I got my 2,000 words done. And then I went to the swimming pool because, I talk about swimming on this show and how much I love to swim and how I have been ocean swimming here, open water swimming. But I got to tell you, it's cold and it's a little nerve wracking because I swim by myself and I'm not giving it up. In fact, I'm going ocean swimming with a friend on Saturday. But I joined the pool system, the Wellington City Council pool system. They have 7 pools and I have tried 2. And the one I went to today on my lunch break was so beautiful. And it's the one that makes me really nervous. I have this thing. I don't know if I've talked about it on the show, and I'm sure you will not be surprised, but I get very nervous doing anything for the first time. That includes dumb things. I'm telling you, like going to the grocery store for the first time, going to a new grocery store for the first time, going to this new pool, which is called Freiburg. And it's the big, grand, huge, gorgeous pool where everybody goes, where I will definitely have to share a lane. Sharing lanes is a brand new thing for me, which makes me very nervous. I have a deep need to get things right when I'm out in public, which is also something I'm working on. But it took a lot of guts for me just to drive to Freiburg today. And where am I going to find the parking meter? Okay, I found a parking meter. Where's the front door of the gym? Okay, I went in and I showed them my badge and then I got to go for a swim and it was fantastic. And I swear half of the giddiness I feel right now is not just from the fantastic, beautiful exercise that I got in the aquatic medium that I love. But it's also the relief that now I can do it anytime I want because I know how it works and I know where to park. I used to, this is true, when I was in grade school, I would, very little grade school, we're talking kindergarten, first grade, second grade, every single day I would go onto the blacktop as soon as I arrived and I would find the teacher on duty that morning and I would tug on her jacket and I would say, do I have a substitute today? And whoever was on duty got used to me doing this every day. And they would be able to tell me, yes, Mrs. Boonstapel is here today. You're fine. Or, no, I'm sorry, Mrs. Boonstapel, real name, isn't here and you have a substitute. And at that point, I think I would go into just total shutdown because it was something new. I would have to deal with something or someone new. And my anxiety about that has never gone away. However, I will bring this back to writing and say that my ability to hold the discomfort, to find some comfort in the discomfort, has gone up. So I knew today that I would not like going to Freiburg Pool for the first time. And I also knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that I would enjoy it and that I would feel relief. Just like I enjoyed writing this morning and I felt relief after I'd done it, that I could check it off my list of what I had done today. So that basically, I've given you my day in a nutshell today. You're welcome. What else is going on around here? That's about it. Classes are going great. I would like to thank some new patrons, Maria Monterulli and Darren McDonald and Stephanie Diane. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining me on the Patreon. It means the world to me. And you know that. And I am so grateful for all of you for allowing me the time to sit at my desk and bring you these interviews like this one I'm going to bring you right now with Kit. And here is Kit's bio. A fan of everything spooky and indulgent, Kit Mayquist is a bisexual transmasculine writer who can be found in the historic shadows of Boston, Massachusetts, hunched over his desk with a sullen Persian cat in his lap and surrounded by antiques. He has an MA in medieval history from the University of Iceland, right? And a BA from Portland State University. And if you ask him, yes, Stumptown will always have the best coffee. Tripping Arcadia is his debut novel. And you are really going to enjoy this interview and I hope the book. All right, y'all. I wish you, in whatever stage you are with your writing, very happy writing. We'll talk soon. Well, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
May I please have you give us your name and your pronouns, please?
Yes, my name is Kit Mayquist, and my pronouns are he, him.
Thank you. Kit, I loved your book. I didn't want to wax rhapsodic before we started chatting, so I cut myself off and we hit the record button. So I just want to explain for people listening what sometimes happens is an editor will reach out to your editor, and then that editor will contact you and say, one of my writers is writing a book. Would you like to read it for a possible blurb? And I always say yes. And most of the time, they're great books, and that's fantastic. But your book, Kit, I loved. I fell into it head over heels. We're going to talk a little bit about what it is about. But to me, it was this darkly atmospheric Gothic. Would you call it a Gothic?
Yeah. Yes, I would.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's a contemporary
fabulous.
Gothic.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
So what Tripping Arcadia is a very Gothic novel, but it just takes place in our present day. So it takes place in present day Boston, and that was something that I really wanted to write and that I really wanted to do was take all these wonderful Gothic themes and kind of apply them to the day and age that we're living in, and some very real issues that we're kind of having in today's time.
Yes, definitely. And you do that brilliantly and beautifully and completely. I was completely captivated. Also, your language lends itself to the Gothic genre, period. Have you heard that? Do you know that about your own diction,
Yeah,
word choice, verbiage, all of those words?
yeah, I've heard that. And I think part of that is intentional, and part of it is just kind of
Yeah,
osmosis. Like
yeah,
I love reading Gothic books. I
yeah,
kind of grew up on them,
me
and
too.
I'm always reading, these very dark and lyrical books. And I think in a lot of ways that kind of shaped how I write. But it's also the kind of book that I wanted to write. So
Yeah.
part of it was very conscious. I wanted to use that kind of archaic feeling language in this contemporary setting. I think it's true to our narrator, Lena, but it's also
Mhm.
just something that was something I wanted to play with a little bit. And so I'm so glad that you think that it worked.
I think it was a risk that paid off in huge dividends. Just the it was almost jarring in this gorgeous way, and then I was just in. I was so hard in. Um, listeners know when I am being passionate about a book, and people, you all need to go out and get Tripping Arcadia, which will be out by the time this podcast airs, but is not out yet. So before we jump into the questions, how are you feeling about your debut book coming out in just a few weeks as we are recording?
Yeah, I think we're down to like yes, three weeks or so, and
Yeah.
it's so strange. I mean, this is my debut novel, so I don't really have any experience with publishing before this, and I think I kind of reached this kind of fog after edits and everything were done, where I feel like I don't know where the last year or so went, like 9 months to a year, because I was living in this book for so long, not just
Yeah.
while I was writing it, but while I was editing it and through this whole process. And so it's been interesting now that we're getting closer to publication, and I don't know, it still feels like a bit of a dream, like a dream come true, like in a good way, but it's like I can't believe this is actually happening. So it's
Oh, and
exciting.
to be able to walk into a bookstore and see your book on the shelves, I cannot wait for that to happen to you. It is
I'm so excited. Yeah.
such a good feeling. Was Stephanie Kelly your editor
Yes.
before
Yes.
she left? She was my editor
Yes.
for my last two books, and I just
Okay.
love her. Love her.
Yeah,
Um,
she's phenomenal.
are you working on anything now?
I am working on a number of things because I'm one of those writers who always has too many pots on the stove.
Me too.
And so yeah, so I've got I on any given day and wherever my brain is between 3 and 5 projects that I'm currently working on. So we'll see which of them becomes a book shape before the others. But yeah.
Well, that leads directly into my next question then, which is, what is your writing process? You are obviously not a person who sticks linearly to the one book until it is done. How
No.
does that, what does this look like for you on a day-to-day practice basis?
Yeah. So I always wanted to be a writer who is good with structure. And because that tends to be like how I operate in my day job. I really like the
Mm,
structure and planning and organizing. But really I've realized over the years that I'm more of a writer who does nothing for 3 months and then spends 48 hours writing 10,000 words. And, that's kind
yes,
of just
yes.
how it goes for me. I tend to take a long break from a project and then dive right into it and obsess over it and can't even like stop thinking about it to sleep. So that's kind of my writing process. Is I always try to be like having things going, but I'll always have more than one project open, and kind of wherever my passion is for that day, wherever that spark of inspiration is for that day, that's the one that I'm going to be focusing on to the best of my abilities anyway.
I love that you're saying this because it is, I love it when people talk about advice that is not the norm, which is, sit down every day and spend 45 minutes on it. Because that does
Yeah.
work for some people and it does not work for other writers. And I think it can
Mhm.
be detrimental for people to hear that over and over again because other processes like yours works beautifully. So when you
Mhm.
do sit down, when you have the time to write and you're pulled toward a project, are you more of a plotter or a discovery writer? Do you have a set number of words that you want to hit in a day? Do you give it
Mhm.
a time or is it just more like a feeling?
So one thing about the way that I write is I tend to, before I even begin writing, spend a day or a week or however long it takes, and I have to tell myself the story from like beginning to end before I even write like the first paragraph of
Ooh,
it.
and how do you tell it to
um
yourself?
I mean, usually it's just kind of, I mean, like stripping Arcadia started because I was literally like on bed rest recovering, and was laying on the couch bored out of my mind, and I came up with the darkest moment of the book possible, and I was like, how do we get there? And so I just went
Oh,
back and I
I
told
love
myself the whole
that.
story from beginning until that point. And that's kind of been my process ever since then. Is I kind of will usually start like I'll have this idea for the dark moment, or sometimes it's the ending, like the end of the mystery, or this horrible scene where everyone is crying and no one is happy, and that's kind of my happy place.
Me
And
too.
I yeah, so I start with that, and then I'm like, okay, but how do we get here? And I just literally like grab a coffee or make a pot of tea, and I just sit down and I do nothing but like close my eyes and just try to retrace the story. And then I come out of that and I end up writing like a 20-page outline, which my agent hates, um, because they're like, we can't submit a 20-page outline. And I'm like, but it's literally 20 pages, single space nonetheless. And so like, it's basically the whole story.
Yeah.
And they're like, but we need the actual story. And I'm like, it's there. But yeah. Um, but that's I think what allows me to then just sit down, and when I have that inspiration, or when I get that idea for a scene, or when I know how to pick up and like the characters come back to life for me, then I can just go to that point in the outline that I've already written, because I already know the story. So I can kind of just like pick it up wherever and
Mm,
write until I run out of steam for it. And so oftentimes that results in a lot of editing, because I kind of
yeah.
write it in these giant puzzle piece chunks that follow along with the outline, but they don't really connect. So then I spend the time doing that connecting part. But yeah, I have a very chaotic style of drafting, I think.
I have this is totally a selfish question on my part because I have also a very chaotic style, but also no plotting usually. And I'm starting a new project next month, and I would love a little bit more structure as usual. But I'm loving what you're saying that I've never heard anybody say. Many people say, I know the ending and I work backward from there. I've never heard anybody say, I knew the dark moment and I
Mhm.
walked back from there, because that sometimes is the most difficult place to get to. But if
Mhm.
you start there, okay, I just like
Yeah.
fireworks are going off in my brain right now.
Yeah. Well,
What is your, yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say, like, I think the reason why I love that is because it's usually going to be your character's emotions like at their highest point.
Yes.
And if you can conceptualize like a scene that knowing nothing is gut-wrenching for you and makes you understand every single character in that scene, then like that's usually what tells me like, okay, I have something and I have enough to go on to kind of go back from there. So I think that's the reason why it's like if it gets my attention, chances are then like I know I have something.
And that particular dark moment in your book was really dark. And I like dark. I'm literally wearing a t-shirt with a rainbow on it that says someday we'll all be dead. Like that's brilliant. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
may try that on Monday, honestly. I will let you know how it goes.
Great.
What is your biggest challenge when it comes to writing?
Um, I think there's a couple of things. I think for me, um, a lot of times it can be that because I know the story, and this is kind of the fault of my process, because I have already told myself the story and I'm already so deep into it before I really begin that writing. Um, After everything is kind of said and done, and I think I have a draft, it's um, I have a big problem with kind of missing information, or I know
Yeah.
something in my head,
Yeah.
but I've forgotten to kind of reveal it, or um, I'm so deep into it, it's hard to tell where to draw the breadcrumbs and things like that. And so that part of the writing process tends to be both the most like agonizing for me and also the thing that takes the longest, because even during that editing process, my editor can be saying, we need to know this, and I'm like, but you do know this, and
I
it's like,
showed you.
yeah, and it's like, but it's like, I know this actually,
Right.
I forgot to actually say this.
Yes.
And so I tend to have a big problem with that, and so my editors are phenomenal, and so is my agent as well, and they all kind of help me with that, um, being like, Kit, you forgot to say this. I'm like, okay, you're right. Um, so, or I think something is really suspenseful and like really like, you're gripping your seat, and they're like, you went from 0 to 90 and we kind of need to slowly ramp it up there. And I'm like, okay, well,
I would love
uh,
to point out too that this is where the glory and the majesty of editors, of professional
yes,
readers, not just your
yes,
pals, not just your writing cohort, but professionals in the industry. They are the ones who can best point that out to us, because we cannot
exactly.
see it. We can't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is, it's wonderful. And I think a lot of the, conversations around what got Tripping Arcadia to the point where it is today came from those kind of
Mhm.
conversations. And it's, I owe a lot to my agent and to my editors and to everyone who's worked on this book for their feedback in that regard, because I know it's a weak spot of mine and I can always be working on it, but I'm definitely someone who I get so deep into it,
Yeah.
and especially when you're doing editing rounds, it's just it's one of those things where the more you edit and the more you're in it, it's actually just putting you deeper into it, so
Hmm.
you can't really solve your own problems anymore.
Because
So
you've
yeah, it
literally
really
thought about that
is.
problem 150 times. You've
Hmm.
put it in different ways 72 times, and you've stripped it back 71 times, but you don't remember like what that half a sentence means everything to me, but it
Hmm.
won't to the person
Yeah,
reading it, to
yeah,
the editor who is able to
yeah.
pick that up. Who's your agent? Just out of curiosity.
My agent is Imi Norsom Higdon,
Oh,
at the
excellent.
Westwood Creative Artists.
I have heard of that, but I haven't heard of them. That's awesome.
Yes.
What is your biggest joy when it comes to writing?
I think it's when everything kind of does come together. And I think on the smallest level, my biggest joy is actually just when like a sentence comes out just right.
Mm,
And like that's enough to like
yeah.
encourage me to keep going with it. Or, there are just some sentences that spark kind of everything. And what I mean, for example, like the thing that really, after I told myself the story of tripping Arcadia, just sitting there, I probably sat with it for days, and then I didn't actually start writing until it just came to me, like that first line, which has stayed the first line the entire time, like since the very first draft, which is
Very
the scent of death
uncommon.
is sweet.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good. It's so good. And it sets you up for everything in the story too. It's not a
Hmm.
throwaway line by any means.
Yeah.
That is so very cool. Okay. Can you share a craft tip of any sort with us?
I think it would be kind of going back and saying, if you're stuck or if you don't know really where to begin, try just thinking of the darkest moment, like put your characters in the worst situation, or start with a scene or anything. It doesn't even need to be something you think is going to end up being a part of the book, but just imagine a scenario where all of your characters' emotions are at their absolute height or
Yes.
at their worst or their saddest, or something
Or
that
all of
is
those
really,
things.
or
Yeah.
all of them. Yeah. And if you can see that, and even if it's just you write 300 words of it or 200 words of it, but if it's enough, like that can often get you where you need to go, and that can either be the thing that ties a scene together for you in a way you didn't think about, or it can um, encourage you on a day where you have writer's block or when the words just aren't coming. Make your characters miserable and see what happens. And you never know. I think um, maybe it's because I am a gothic writer and I just naturally like darker stories, and I like reading books where people are miserable and crying and haunted by things. But I think it's an emotion that everyone understands, and it's a really easy way for you to connect to your characters. So if you're stuck or anything, I really recommend just put your characters through hell and see what happens.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna die on this hill because sometimes I have students who come to me and say, but you know what? I just don't really want anything bad to happen in my book, really bad. So I think you and I are on the same side of we want the worst thing to happen. Um, how would you encourage the writer who says, I just don't know if I can do that to my character?
Yeah. Um, there is one of my favorite examples is actually because I have friends who also like they don't like the dark things. And it's okay, but think of like the worst day you've had, like when you miss the train and you drop your coffee and there's too many people in line, and literally you've only been awake for an hour, but your like frustration level, like you just want to scream. That Write that. Like it's not devastating, but it's also a very relatable thing. I don't know. I'm in Boston, so like I'm just describing the morning I had already. So, but like, you know, the scene, like the scene where Lena forgets her card is
Oh yeah.
too much of that is real. So, it comes from a true place. So,
Oh my
even
God.
if you don't want to write your character genuinely devastated, or you don't want to put them through hell or a breakup or a death or anything like that, just go to like your worst day. Think of like a span of an hour where things escalate from like I'm happy, I'm fine, to one bad thing. And that's also enough. That's also
Yeah.
devastating in a way.
Yeah. It's to the point where I can no longer hold it together. How did you get
Yes.
there and what did that look like? That's
Yeah.
really, really useful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would love to know what thing in your life affects your writing in a surprising way.
um so I think this is actually something that I've come to terms with more and more over the past year or so. But and I think uh, something that did happen is my father passed away last month.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And thank you. And that kind of helped me realize that everything I write, including the things that I have in the works now, and even like Tripping Arcadia, um, I am a writer who's deeply shaped by kind of um, grief and expectations of
Mm,
grief, and kind of someone's own relationship to family and to their health and their body. And they, I think there's so many different ways to explore grief without someone dying. And then there's so many different levels to it. And I did not realize that this was something that was kind of infused into everything that I wrote. But it it absolutely is.
mhm.
And I think it doesn't always need to be such a sad thing, but it's definitely something that I think is deeply influential to me, I think. And so that's, yeah, not necessarily the happiest answer, but is, I think, I'm someone who that's been very true for. And I think as hard of a topic as it is, it's also a very relatable topic.
Yep.
And it's, especially in the times that we're living in right now, I mean, we live in a world surrounded by grief. And so it's something that I've reflected on a lot, but am ultimately grateful to have as an influence in what I do.
I think that answer is incredibly beautiful, and I resonate with it so much. My core stories are the mother-daughter relationship and grief, and both of those things are super linked for me. And
Mhm.
what you said about the expectations of grief, and then I was thinking about the main character in Tripping Arcadia, and the shape of loss is in there, even if it's never directly looked at, but it's in there underpinning your book. um
Yeah.
the holes that Lena is missing and is reaching for in these other two characters and what she wants, and
Mhm.
it's so well done. And you have put your finger on why I loved the book so much, because of that echo of grief, which I think is one of the most
Mhm.
beautiful things that we have as a human being. It makes us who
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
if we're able to look at it. And some people don't want to look at it, and they will opt out of our
Yeah.
books. It's a
Yeah.
self-selecting group.
Mhm. I do also want to say, grief isn't always a person. Um, for Lena, it's grieving the loss of opportunity, the loss of
Yeah.
a future that she imagined, the loss of relationships, and the loss of understanding her place in the world. And there's so many different levels to uh, grieving that it doesn't necessarily need to be linked to a person.
Yeah.
But we can grieve so many different things in our lives. And loss is loss, and there's so many different ways that we can respond to that. um, but I just want to add that too, that there's so many different ways to explore grief.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I hope that you continue to do that work. And it sounds like you are. So
Yes.
good for us readers. Um, moving topics gently. What is the best book that you've read recently, and why did you love it?
Gosh. So I have not been doing a ton of reading very lately because of just debut year and
Yeah.
everything. Um, but let's see. Um, let me think. Let's see. I know that one that was really kind of comforting to me a couple of months ago was First Become Ashes by K.M. Spara.
I don't know that.
Um, it is I think it's still futuristic, so sci-fi in a sense, um, kind of fantasy-esque novel, but it deals with trauma and understanding your place in the world. And I highly recommend it for having really good kind of representation of marginalized identities and having trans characters and poly characters and just a lot of things that you don't normally get to see in a novel like that.
Yeah.
And so for me, um, it was very kind of comforting, and it was a good book to get lost in. So,
And that was called, sorry, say it again.
First Become Ashes
First Become
by
Ashes.
K.M. Spara. Yeah.
Okay. Fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the other one that's a little bit closer to TA vibes is I've recently just been reading a lot of Lucy Foley. So I just finished The Hunting Party, which is just a
Oh, I read
phenomenal.
that. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't think I've read Lucy Foley, but I read that one because it all came back
Yeah.
when you said the title.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a good one to kind of get lost in winter. So
Yes. Super, super,
yeah.
super cold. I'm remembering that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, can you now tell us a little bit more about Tripping Arcadia? Maybe give us the log line for it and where it can be found.
Gosh. I
Putting you on the spot.
I know. I'm like, do I even know my log line at this point? I'm
I,
gonna actually start by just pitching it with the exact same way I got my agent with this book, which
yes, please.
is uh, basically if you like crying or boys crying in greenhouses. And I literally like
That's
tweeted this
fantastic.
late at night. Just I tweeted into the darkness, just saying, all right, if there's any agents out there that want sad boys crying in greenhouses, please. And my agent just replied with yes, what age group? And I mean, the rest is history. But it was like my last chance, and I just was frustrated, and I tweeted, and
And it wasn't even
that's
pitch
that.
wars or
No,
manuscript wish list or anything like that. Oh
no,
my
it
God.
just yeah, yeah. So it's fantastic, and I
That
love
is
that. So
so cool.
I always like to start with like, okay, well, if it was good enough to get my agent, then maybe it'll be good enough, to tell you to read this book. But
Yes.
yeah, sad boys crying in greenhouses. Um, that's Tripping Arcadia. But ultimately, Tripping Arcadia is a contemporary Gothic that focuses on a young woman, Lena, who is a med school dropout and finds herself in the employment of a very wealthy family here in Boston. And over the course of her employment, cares for the very ill poetic heir to the family and to their company, and slowly uncovers that family is kind of to blame for the ruin of her own family. And therefore, through a series of parties, begins to kind of plot her botanical revenge.
Botanical revenge. Those are another two words that will light up the synapses in
Yeah.
people's brains.
I call it my like dark Gatsby book. It's
I can see that.
yeah,
I can
it's
absolutely
Gothic
see that.
Gatsby.
Gothic
Yeah.
Gatsby. That's wonderful. Okay. And where can we find you on the interwebs?
So you can find me mostly on Twitter, though I'm someone who's pretty bad at social media, I will say that. But you can find me on Twitter at K Mayquist, and on Instagram at the same. So at K Mayquist on Instagram.
Thank you so much for writing the book that I loved. For I feel linked to it because I did a blurb. I went to your Amazon page and there was my name, and I took one millionth of pride in being on the same page as you. So I'm very excited about your book and your release, and I wish you the best of success and may it fly from the shelves. I cannot wait to see where you go next.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kit. Take care.